Hi guys, welcome back to my tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about polymorphism. And polymorphism in Python is just basically the ability for a method, a function to be able to be called upon and work in a different way. So let's look at the len function in Python. We've used this a couple of times. So we have the len function. Let me run a example with the len function here. Let's say we have a variable x and the variable is hello world, for instance. So you would see that if I want to count the number of times the number of items we have in the variable here, I can just simply run the len function on the variable x. I could say print, I would say print on a new line, then give me the length of this variable, len, as you can see here. Len, then I call in the variable name. Indentation error there. Let me clean that up real quick. So I have this and I want to know the number of items I have on this variable. I can simply run this on the console and I would see 11 in my console here, telling me the number I have, number of variables I have, number of characters I have in my variable. I can still use the len function on a list or a tuple. So I can come here and say my tuple, for some reason I can't spell this correctly today. My tuple is equals to, and I would give an example of a tuple here. Let us call it a bunch of fruits. Apple, let's say banana, banana, banana. Then let's say we have one more. Let's pass one more here. We have let's see what fruit comes to mind here. Let us say grape. Okay, just for presentation's sake. Grape. Then let's clean this up. We have columns here that needs to be edited. Okay, so now I want to get the numbers of characters I have in my tuple. I can also come back here and still run the len function. So this is an example of polymorphism in Python. In OOP generally, polymorphism is just the ability for a certain function or method to be called upon and perform in different ways. So I'm going to call the len function here again on the lists, and you would see how it works on the list too. It's just the same thing. It's going to give me the length of items in my tuple. So I would say len, I'm passing my tuple there, and when I run this to the console, I should see 3. I have 3 items in my tuple. So polymorphism is just the ability to use a particular function or method severally in your code and have different results each time you call on that method. So I'm going to be using a different example here to illustrate polymorphism in my class. Let's clear this up. I'm going to create a class of car, and I'm going to create different classes from that in that same code and use a particular function from the first function, and I'm going to call it differently so you guys will see how the idea of polymorphism works. So like in our last example that we used the car, I'm going to use the car to explain the concept of polymorphism in this class. So let's start with the class definition. I have a class. I'm going to call the class car. Then I told you guys that okay, when you define a class, you are available to you have the availability of int, that's the init, the structure function, the string function, and a whole lot more. So I'm going to use the init function here on the class to just call on a particular variable when the class is being called upon. Then I'm going to use this init here. And I'm going to pass in the self, which is the instance of the class I've said before. Then I'm going to just use a couple of like brand and model for this class of car. Then I want to pass in those instances. I'm going to say self dot brand is equals to brand. And on the next line, I'm going to say self dot model is equals to model. Okay, so I've created the init function that is going to be called upon every time the class is being used. Then I want to now have a function move. So now this function move is going to be applied to other vehicles. So every vehicle moves in a certain way, but they do not operate in the same mechanism. So a car moves, a boat sails. You understand? So I'm going to use that illustration to explain polymorphism here. Now I'm going to create my class first of all. The class is just my function is going to be move. Then I'm going to pass in the self here. Then let's see, self. Then let's pass in. Let us print to the console the mechanism here. Print. Then we print in drive. Let's start with drive. Okay. So this will be the first instance. Then let's print this to the console. So now I'm going to create a different class. Let's start with the different vehicle. Let's start with boats. Let's not even use the vehicles now. Let's start with the boats. So now I'm going to create a different class, and I'm going to call this class boats. So I say class boats. Then I'm going to call on this def function that I called in the first class, and I'm going to pass in a different action to the class. So I'm going to use in the same. Let me just copy this concept from here. Copy this from here and drop back. Just make it easy for ourselves. Okay, so I want to pass in this same def function, but in this time I don't want to call the drive action on it. I want to call the sail on a boat because a boat does not drive, a boat sails. So I'm going to call in the same function, def move function, and I'm going to call it here and pass a different action. So I'm going to say def, then the same move, but instead of it to drive, I'm just going to tell it to sail. Okay, so I'd say print sail, pass that in a string. Okay, print sail. Boom. So that's it. Now I'm going to pass in another function, another class, and give it a different method to operate with. I'm going to pass in, let's do one more. Let's just copy this and let's just do for a plane. So I'm going to call this new class plane. Then for the plane, I'm going to pass in the same um function move, and I'm going to say, okay, for the planes fly. So that's going to be the method here I'm going to use. So if you observe here, I have called in the class car and I have passed in this certain function move, and I'm calling that same function move in plane, but in plane, and it's going to sail instead of it to drive. I'm passing that same function in the boat, and it's going to sail instead of drive. So this is the ability for a function or a method, as the case may be, to perform different actions when it's being called upon and have no errors when you run it. So I'm going to give you an instance of this. I'm going to print to the console some instances that would allow me to properly explain the logic to you. So let's create an object from the car class. So I say car one is equals to, let's call it, it's car, we call it here. We call it car. Then let's pass in some default attributes there. Let's pass in, let's call it Camry. Toyota, it's the brand. Let's say Toyota. Then let's pass in one more. Let's pass in the model. Let's say it's a Camry. Okay, that's for the car. Let's pass in for the boots. Boots one is equals to, we call it boots. Yeah, we use the case there. Then what boot are we going to use? Let's use Ibiza. Then let's use Touring here. Let's use Touring 20 here. Let's use Touring 20 for the brand, for the model. I get that spelling well. Touring 20. Okay. Then for the plane, we're going to use Boeing 747. That's a popular plane. So plane one. We're going to say plane, passing this, and we'd say it's Boeing. and we have the model to be 747. 747. Yeah. So now I'm going to pass all these objects in a list and loop through them. So you're going to see the result in the console. So I'm going to use a for loop here to assign all this to a list or tuple as the case may be, and I loop through them. So I'd say for x in, let's use a tuple, call the car one, call goods one, then I call plane one, then run this in the console. I'm going to print x.move on them because that's the method we're trying to, that's a function we're trying to advertise here. Yeah, so I just basically assign them to a tuple and I want to loop through it one time, then looping through them one by one. That's one handy feature we have there. So I'm going to save this and run in the console. Then we should be seeing I have a car error. I use the capital C here just to be small c here. So fix that real quick, run it again. So you can see in my console here, I have drive, sail, fly, and this is to just show you the power of polymorphism in OOP, the way this function can be called in different instances and have different results. I also have another way to show you. We can also use this class car and have children from this main class and still assign this drive method, this move method to the children of that class, and it will still work fine. It will still work in the same way as we did it in this class instances here. So I'm just going to convert this other classes to children class of the main class car, and I'm going to call that first class vehicle just to properly illustrate what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to come here and change this to vehicle because it's more logical that way. Change this to vehicle. Then we keep this method here, but we're going to just change it to move. Just okay, the vehicle moves. That's the logic. Then we're going to change this one to inherit from the main class vehicle, and it's going to be called, okay, call boats. Boats should inherit from class car vehicle, then inherit from vehicle there. Let's be sure the naming sequence is lowercase. Okay, vehicle. Then let's call on the plane, and the plane should inherit from vehicle. Let's have one more for a car, but we're not going to pass in anything there. We're just going to, okay, by default, the classes are already inheriting the init function. That's the beautiful part about inheriting. So we're just going to use that here. And then what do we have? Let's clear this up. We have the boots, we have the vehicle. Let's do one more for plane, and let's see. Let's clean this up a bit. Okay, we have for the vehicle, we have for the car. We have for the boat, sorry. Then we do one more. Let's do two more, heck. Okay. Okay. So for the plane, I'm going to call this second one car. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to just use the pass keyword here, like I showed you guys in the previous tutorials. I'm just going to use the pass keyword here, and I'm going to call on the last one, I'm going to call it plane. Then we are going to the boat's sales. That's the action I want for the boats. So see here now, I've been able to create a class vehicle, and I passed in the init function, and I passed in the move function, and I want all classes to inherit from the vehicle, which by default they get the default init there, and I want each of them to call on this method here, move, but to perform certain operations on the move than the default operation. On the boats here, it's going to sail, but on the car, I'm not going to pass in any function. By default, it's going to inherit this and print this to the console. Then for the plane, I'm changing it to fly here. So this is another way to show you the power of polymorphism. Polymorphism is not just on classes alone, but it's also on child and parent classes. Then when I print to the console here again, I'm going to use the same instances, but I think I changed their names here. So I'm going to have boats and car. Boats, car, and plane are my classes. So boats, car, and plane. Boats, car, and plane. I think I use lowercase here. I'm going to reprint this again to the console and you would see how they work. I'm going to just add some more statements here. Let's print one more thing. The let's print the brand. Let's print the brand, extra brand. Yeah. So let's clear up the console. Okay, so now let's run this and see. Run this, I should have no errors. If I have errors, we're going to fix it. So you can see now in my console, I have Toyota Move, I have Ibiza Sail, and I have Buoyant Fly. Observe that on the car, on the car child, I did not pass in any function to it. I just inherited the function from the parent class, but it took it in and returned to me move for the car because by default car moves. So that's why I want to happen on that one. So you can see how polymorphism has been able to just give us a different return every time we called on the function in the parent class. It's the same thing we did for the first the same thing we did for the first three cases where we had different classes using the same move function and they're performing different operations. That's the power of polymorphism. So that's it for this class, guys. I just wanted to show you guys polymorphism and how we can go about using polymorphism. I'm going to take this one more time. Polymorphism allows us to use a particular method, object, or function severally and have different results each time we call on it. That's the power of polymorphism. It gives you this iterable power of functions and you can have a whole lot of things to do with it. This is just the surface level of what we can use polymorphism for. This is going to be the second to the last class, guys. So in the next class, we're going to be talking about input statements, modules, and we're going to call it a wrap for the basic introduction of Python. From there on, you can move on to learn different things with Python, like data science. You could learn machine language. You can learn a whole lot of things. We're going to talk about that more in the next tutorial. See you guys there.